name's Megan Edwards of Focus Communications, and this morning we're joined once again by Patrick Highsmith, Chairman of FireFox Gold. Patrick will discuss FireFox Gold's recently completed drill program at the Sarvi project in Lapland, Finland. And FireFox Gold is a Finland gold explorer that trades on the Toronto Venture Stock Exchange under the symbol FFOX and also on the OTCQB as FFOXF. Patrick, thank you so much for joining us today.
Good morning, Megan. Good to be here.
So before we discuss yesterday's news, could you give us an overview of FireFox and your portfolio of projects in Finland?
Yes, Megan. As you said, we're 100% focused in Finland. We're a gold exploration company focused in the north of Finland and the Lapland region. Lapland is getting a fair bit of attention these days because of recent discoveries reported by Rupert Resources and also in B2 Gold and its joint venture with Orion Resources. So it's kind of an emerging gold terrain, but it's a greenstone belt like many others around the world that host gold deposits of similar age and in similar rocks, Megan. And on this map, we just show, sort of remind folks that the infrastructure in this part of Finland and some of the sort of landmarks here are the city of Kittilä, kind of in the left center of the slide, International Airport there, by the way, the city of Sodankylä in the lower right-hand part of the slide. And of course, Agnico Eagle operates the Kittilä mine near the central top part of the slide there. So that's Lapland, and we've highlighted in gold the FireFox's tenements there. We have paved highways crisscrossing the area, great infrastructure, Megan, no helicopters needed. And we circled a couple of things here. Probably folks have seen a good bit of news flow coming from our Mustajärvi Project, with this the sort of left-hand oval on this slide. But today, just down the road, about 20 kilometers, is our Sarvi project, which adjoins Rupert's Ikkari discovery, over 4 million ounces of gold there at Ikkari. And about 8 kilometers of the northern boundary of Rupert is FireFox's Sarvi project. And that's where we've been drilling and are talking about those results today.
Absolutely. And yesterday, the company announced completion of a second drill program at your Sarvi project. For those new to this area, could you walk us through the region, as it's one of the known gold camps within the central Lapland Greenstone Belt?
Yes, I'll just start here still on this slide, Megan, because I've already pointed out the Sarvi discovery, the Ikkari discovery there south of Sarvi. And also you can see our large land position on the Kolho trend just to the northeast of that. If we sort of zoom in a little bit more, what you're seeing on this figure is a magnetics image, and the warm colors are more magnetic rocks, and the blues and greens are less magnetic rocks. And just kind of looking at the lower central part of the slide, you can see our Sarvi permits there. Outlined in orange to the south of us is the land position held by Rupert around the Ikkari discovery. And a few things to note, sort of regionally, you see these black lines ripping through here. Those are major faults interpreted at a regional scale. These are common in these greenstone belts. You'll often hear us geologists talking about the major through-going structures or breaks in these greenstone belts. And you can see some of those going through Rupert's property, some of those coming through our property there at Sarvi. And off to the upper right of the slide, you can actually see up in this area here, another one of those black lines coming through along the Kolho trend. And really, this whole set of structures here just meanders through here and kind of wraps around through that Kolho trend. And a similar set of them pass through our Sarvi project and turn north like that. So that's the sort of geological setting, as it were. Our Sarvi project here is about 21 square kilometers. It was granted in 2022 as a valid permit. It's really a total of 3 permits there. And we have a couple of other permits marked on the slide further north. Sarvi is a very early stage project. We've only begun exploring there. It's a large area, kind of lowlands. Let's just call it swamp. The southern half of the property kind of shares a swamp with Rupert Resources to our south. And that means, Megan, we don't have a lot of outcrop in the area. So there's some rock sampling to the northern part of our property, but we're relying on base of till sampling for a lot of the targeting work. We've so far collected about 1,600 bot samples, and we just got started drilling last year. In total, we're still under 3,000 meters of drilling across the whole property. That property is 8 kilometers from east to west across the property. And recently, as we said, we just completed 4 holes for a total of only 611 meters. We'll talk about why we're testing shallow targets here. The assays are pending. It's important to make note of that. But we also had to end this program a little prematurely because the snow started to melt. The best time to explore here in the swamps, Megan, as we've discussed before, is in the winter. And when that spring thaw comes, you need to get the drill rig off the snow, which we did. And so a little bit cut short, but we'll get through a little bit of the geology of that drilling here in a minute.
And in this program, you drilled 4 holes, and we should make it clear the assays are still pending. But let's discuss your exploration strategy at the targets here. As we've already mentioned, you're right next to a big discovery at Rupert's Ickery deposit. From a geologic standpoint, are you targeting a similar style of mineralization at Sarvi and with your other projects in the area along the Pulho Trend, for instance?
Yeah, I'll just stay on this slide for a moment to convey the target concepts here. This property straddles an important geologic break. You can see it on this magnetics map. You have these very magnetic rocks to the south and less magnetic rocks to the north. And that boundary is a major structure. And we've outlined that here like so. And we're confirming that with our more detailed magnetic surveys, that is in fact a major break. And we've now collected base of till sampling across sort of, that sort of part of the property. So that gives us some insight into what we're seeing. We're learning more about the geology. And I would say that a couple of things you should look for here. You'll notice as we zoom in a moment that we're drilling along that major break very often. And we're also chasing, Megan, a structural setting. There are these interpreted cross-cutting faults that we show some of on this slide that cross-cut these east-west features. That is very often the target in orogenic gold. And if I just go to the next slide, we've zoomed in a little bit more now so you can actually see where these 4 holes were drilled, kind of on the mostly the eastern portion of the Sarvi property here. And you can see the 4 holes are outlined there. And we've also shown some geologic color. And we were interpreting before we started drilling that the southern third of the property with these mafic volcanic rocks, and then the gray unit is graphite-bearing schist and tuff. Some of that is called black shales. And then we have more basalts, mafic volcanics on the northern part of the property. And the first 2 holes, 1 and 2, which are kind of in the center of the slide, those were drilled here underneath a rock sample. So in this swamp, there's a little island sticking up, and the guys prospected on that island, found some outcrop there, and they assayed the rock there. It ran 1.47 grams per ton gold, 1.86% copper. It had visible copper staining on it, and we finally got to drill under that. The mineralization comes to surface from that outcrop, and so these are pretty shallow holes, about 40 meters apart. And those did encounter mafic volcanic rocks that have been altered, sheared, and they did encounter quartz and quartz carbonate veining with chalcopyrite, pyrite, and tourmaline. So the geology is encouraging. Probably initially a fairly narrow zone that we encountered there, but we're waiting on assays, so we'll see what that means. But it seems like we hit some alteration and some mineralization there. And then in the other holes, we jumped over to the east, and here you see very interesting kind of maybe comparisons to what's going on to the south of us. You can see these northeasterly structures coming up like so, intersecting with this big break we've been talking about here. And the 2 holes are number 3 here in the south and number 4 in the north. Those were targeting kind of the structural intersection, which is a similar intersection to what maybe led to the Ickery discovery. But also we have anomalies in bot geochemistry, base of till geochemistry over here that we tested. Hole 3 looks like it was just mafic volcanics there, and maybe not anything too exciting in that hole. We don't know yet. We haven't seen the assays. But hole 4 was very interesting. We crossed through probably that fault, and we encountered a major contact between sedimentary rocks to the north and volcanic rocks to the south. And at that contact, there was abundant pyrite and graphite. So again, alteration, the presence of the sulfides, the pyrite is a good indication there. And yeah, I mean, our impression is we got into a system there. And I guess I would want to just draw a little comparison to Ickery here with this last slide. I think if we take away preliminarily speaking, what did we get from this slide? And this is kind of more to your last question, is if you notice looking at this slide, Ickery's down at the south and Heine Central is shown there. You have this corridor of mineral deposits that the Rupert guys are drilling. And it's definitely related to these east-west structures and this corridor of both northeast and northwest structures. I'm just drawing all those lines to point out what appears to be a trend there. And that trend kind of goes north-northeast. And you'll notice there's the rock chip sample I mentioned, highlighted in yellow there, highlighted in yellow there. And we've drilled in that area, and we've also drilled a little bit further east over in this area. So appears to be a similar setting. Now, of course, just because the project has similar geology and maybe similar rock types and even similar alteration, that doesn't mean we're necessarily going to see the same alteration or mineralization on our property that we have at the neighboring property. But as you know, we work in analogies in geology, and we do see some analogies here that are encouraging. So the big takeaways are we do have this structural corridor that seems to track through the eastern part of Sarvi. We have major structural intersections that I've pointed out here, which is encouraging. And those black shales that I mentioned, it turned out those have already hosted mineralization on the Sarvi property. Over last year, folks may recall, we drilled the first hole on the property here on the west side of the property, and we did encounter anomalous silver and gold in that hole. It was narrow, as you can see there, sort of 17 meters or something of 0.134 grams gold and a thicker interval of silver, 25 meters of 2 grams silver or so. And those are very similar rocks to those that we see in these latest holes on the east side of the property. So early days, we'll have a few weeks to wait yet for the assays, but we see a lot of favorable things emerging on the Sarvi project. And these holes are really our first glimpse of the geology, given that much of the property is covered with swamps. And in fact, the melting snow prevented us from testing a couple of other targets here on the east side of the property. So such is life when you're exploring in Lapland, Megan.
Right. And in the release, you mentioned that the drill mobilized to the Mustajärvi project after Sarvi. We look forward to hearing about that in the next few weeks. We know FireFox has drilled a lot of interesting holes at Mustajärvi, and you've got a lot of news coming up. Is there anything you'd like to leave with investors on FireFox?
Well, it is great time for news flow. The nice thing about these spring programs, Megan, is they wrap up here in sort of May, and then that leaves assays coming in the summer when we're off doing warm weather exploration work. So results coming from Sarvi in the next few weeks, as we've just outlined, and we'll be updating as well with sort of getting folks oriented where we drilled at Mustajärvi and what to expect there. Because as you say, I refer people to the website to look at the last few news releases from Mustajärvi, where we've encountered some very nice intercepts of high-grade gold during the first quarter of this year. So should be a news-rich environment for the next couple of months, Megan.
We look forward to it. Once again, thank you so much for coming on the show today, Patrick. And we're very excited to watch the FireFox Gold story evolve, and we look forward to having you on again very soon.
Well, thank you very much. Stay tuned.